One teenager in a skirt, one teenager with a lighter, one moment that changes their lives forever. This is what's written on the inside flap of the book, The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater. This book is the pick for the Big Gay Read, and I am presenting a special episode of Teen Pride Book Talks to tell you about it. My name is Lucy, and on Teen Pride Book Talks, I take some time to talk about a young adult book that is both representative of and inclusive of folks in the LGBTQIA+ community. So The 57 Bus is a story of a very high-profile crime, but more than that, it is the story of the two people who were involved in the crime. This book tells us about how the two teenagers who are on either side of this crime had a moment in their lives that intersected. They never would have overlapped at all had there not been 8 minutes together on the 57 bus in Oakland, California. The full title of the book is The 57 Bus, a true story of two teenagers and the crime that changed their lives. And what Dashka Slater does in this book is really give you a very inside view, not only of the two teenagers, Richard and Sasha, and how they ended up on that bus together, but of their communities and their families as well, which really helps to explain where they were in their lives when they got on that bus. This book is narrative nonfiction, and it's told in alternating viewpoints. Dashka Slater began to tell this story as a reporter in the New York Times Magazine, and this book is an expansion of that allows her to present a lot more information to the readers. Sasha and Richard are the two teenagers who were on that bus. They are both high school students in Oakland, but from vastly different worlds. Sasha, at the time of the incident, was 18 years old, a white teen, agender, who used they, them pronouns and lived in a middle-class suburb and went to a small private school. Richard was 16 at the time, a Black male who lived in a crime-ridden neighborhood in Oakland and attended a large public school. And in a way, the 57 bus is emblematic of Oakland and all the diverse worlds that it encompasses. So what happened? Well, on November 4th, 2013, Richard and Sasha were on the bus, and Richard set Sasha's skirt on fire. Sasha was very badly burned, rushed to the burn unit, and spent 3 weeks in that burn unit. They had multiple surgeries. Richard was arrested the next day while at school and charged with 2 felonies, both of which had hate crime attachments. Richard got on the 57 bus that day with a group of friends, and Sasha was sitting in a seat in the back. Sasha had been reading a book and they dozed off. Richard and his friends were joking around, and Richard was playing with a lighter and he kept flicking it open. And while he was doing this, one of his friends pointed out Sasha, who they called the dude in a skirt. And Richard sort of began opening his lighter near the skirt, and his friends egged him on and said, yeah, do it. So Richard ignited the lighter, touched it to Sasha's skirt, and Richard and his friends got off the bus. Sasha's skirt immediately went up in flames, and Sasha suffered these terrible, terrible burns. So as I said before, this book is an expansion of Slater's article, and the book presents us with these 2 points of view, Richard's and Sasha's. There is some poetry in the book. There are some email correspondences. The chapters are very short, and it provides this immersive insight into Richard and Sasha's lives before this incident. The book is divided into sections. It starts with the incident, and then we get Sasha's section, where we learn of Sasha's childhood and their early interest in language. They even invented their first language when they were 2 years old, and then later invented a language of their own. As a teenager, this invention of languages and this interest in words and their sounds was really crucial to Sasha on their journey to choosing their pronouns. We meet Sasha's best friends, we meet Sasha's parents, we learn how empathetic Sasha is, how loving and supportive their environment is. Sasha and their friend Andrew, who is trans, had lots of conversations before Sasha came out as agender around gender and sexuality and romance and the terms that were used to categorize people. There's a glossary in Sasha's section that provides terms for gender and sex, terms for sexuality, and terms for romantic inclination, with a disclaimer that language is evolving and these terms could always change or be added to. Discovering these different terms and identities was really important to Sasha as they began to identify as genderqueer and then truly become themselves. And the inclusion of these terms in the world around them was so important to Sasha that they even started a petition to request that the Obama administration legally recognize genders outside of the male and female binary. In Sasha's section of the book, we learn about the school that they end up at, this private school. It's very supportive and allows Sasha to be themselves. The next section of the book is Richard's side of the story. We meet Richard in the beginning of this section when he's just had this terrible year. He has experienced recently the violent death of a very close friend. We go back in Richard's history and we learn that Richard's mother had him when she was 15. He was the center of her world until he was about 9 years old, at which time his aunt was shot. This was his mother's sister. And his cousins moved in with him and his family, his two young cousins, and he was no longer the center of his mother's world. And he just felt like nobody saw him. His mother and her partner Derek went on to have another child after that, and this made Richard feel even more lost in the shuffle. A very important figure in Richard's life that we meet in this section is a woman named Caprice Wilson. She was Oakland High School's attendance compliance officer, and she was really a surrogate mother figure to a lot of people. She was very nurturing and very supportive. It was really important for her to be there for the students who needed her and needed the extra support. When Richard was 14, he was arrested after he and a group of friends got into a fight, and he was put into the juvenile system. His friend group was permanently broken apart as they were all moved to different group homes, including Richard, who ended up in a group home in Oakland for about 1.5 years. So he wasn't living with his family at that time. While he was in that group home, he learned that one of his very close friends, Skeet, who was also arrested, had been shot. Skeet was one of the first people in 2013 in Oakland that was shot. There were 91 more people killed in Oakland that year, including another relative and friend of Richard's. So this gives us a sense of Richard's world and where he's coming from when he gets on that bus. And then after we have learned about the communities and the people that surround Richard and Sasha, we read about the details of the incident and then Richard's arrest, Sasha's physical and emotional attempts at healing, and Richard's trial after he was arrested. Richard was going to be tried as an adult because of the hate crime attachments to these felonies. It was really important to Sasha that Richard not be tried as an adult. They didn't think that that was the right thing. And that is something that this book really goes into. What happens when you look at a 16-year-old as an adult and put them through the criminal justice system in that sense, and how that conveys that this person is beyond repair. And in this part of the book, in Richard's trial, it's where we really truly see Sasha's empathy and the amazing person that Sasha is, and their ability to see Richard as a person and to be able to understand that the crime was horrific, but to also see that Richard was 16 years old and that Richard's path to justice was not going to be in the adult criminal justice system in this country. So this book deals with gender, it deals with race, it deals with justice, and Slater does a great job of giving you these two sides. And you see that there are no easy answers in a situation like this. One thing that Slater does go into a little bit is the idea of restorative justice. This is not something that was used in this case. Restorative justice asks that both sides be willing to participate. And Sasha provided a victim impact statement, and they needed to spend time focusing on their own healing. A review of this book in the Chicago Tribune says that it encourages readers to think beyond rigid traditional social norms and the prejudices that often accompany them. It's a difficult read. As I said before, there are no easy answers. And what Slater has done is to really provide us with a jumping off point for many discussions around all the issues involved. This book might ask you to think differently about gender. It might ask you to think differently about the justice system. All of that is laid out in these short chapters and correspondences and poems throughout the book. I am not going to tell you what the outcome of the story is. It's more important for me here to talk about how Slater really introduces us to the people involved in this and how we get to know Sasha and we learn about Richard. And I would urge you to read the book. It provides a lot to think about and certainly to grapple with. It's a very important read. That is The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater, which is the pick for the Big Gay Read. Thanks for joining me.